I'll admit the Apple sheep arc is almost complete, okay? When we first started hearing rumors about the razor-thin iPhone, I was like, there's no way this can be real, right? The leaks have to be wrong. Maybe this is a flip phone, maybe this is a folding iPhone, and that's why they care about it being so thin, but I have to confess, as time has gone on and more reports and leaks have come out about this iPhone 17 Slim, or maybe it's called Air, or maybe there's no 17 at all, I have to admit it's starting to all fall into place. It's all starting to make a bit more sense. And I think it really clicked in my head once the most recent rumor of pricing came forward. So I figured now's a good time to kind of recap everything to expect with this brand new iPhone in the lineup. Let's begin. So let's get pricing out of the way, because the latest reports are saying around $899, basically the same starting price as the iPhone 16 Plus and 15 Plus and 14 Plus, which should be mentioned in this video because essentially the Plus iPhones, they're not selling all that well, and it sounds like Apple is kind of doing away with them, similar to the performance of the mini iPhones, which is a shame because I really love those mini iPhones, and I got a lot of friends and family members still rocking 12 and 13 minis. They just didn't sell well enough, and Apple seems to keep trying to experiment with this hypothetical fourth model in the lineup, right? For a while there, they were pretty comfortable with having two sizes for the Pros, and then you have a cheaper iPhone that kind of sits between them, like the XR and the 11, but they wanted to expand on that lineup a bit. Maybe it's because Apple is a bit nostalgic for that classic Steve Jobs quadrant, and it feels like they're applying it to many other segments of the business, right? There's two sizes of MacBook Pro, two sizes of MacBook Air, two sizes of iPad Pro, and two sizes of iPad Air. So it sounds logical, right? That for the iPhone, at least, there should be two cheaper options, and really emphasis on cheaper, not necessarily cheap. Now that the SE is gone, there's basically no cheap iPhones left, but they want to have a larger size option that's not for the Pros, and it just sounds like those plus sizes of iPhone have not been selling well enough, but Apple still wants some kind of iPhone to sit at that price point of $899. $100 cheaper than a Pro, and there's a good chance its single purpose is to be a decoy model to make people go, wait, for only $100 more, I can get a Pro iPhone? I'll just do that. So instead of manufacturing kind of a average iPhone that's just a little bigger, like a 16 or 15 Plus, they're deciding let's experiment a little bit more with this model. Maybe it doesn't sell all that well, but it could at least be an interesting manufacturing exercise for them that will help pave the way for perhaps folding iPhones in the future, or at least experimenting with new iPhone manufacturing techniques that could apply to other models down the road. And that makes me feel a lot more comfortable with the idea of the 17 Air, and specifically giving it different branding from the regular iPhone 17, which is supposed to still have a dual camera, a pretty normal thickness, and even normal Apple modems on the inside. That's right, they're not switching the entire iPhone 17 line to the C1 chip. It's rumored to just come to the Air model, and it sounds like there's a few other weird hardware exclusions to get this thickness down, including no more physical SIM tray, which if you're watching in the United States, you're like, who cares? They got rid of the SIM tray years ago, but keep in mind, outside of the United States, Apple has still been selling iPhones with physical SIM trays in pretty much every other country, but it sounds like the 17 Air might be the first one to go eSIM only globally, like internationally, as in no other iPhone 17 Air sold in China or the US or Mexico or Australia or Europe will actually have a physical SIM tray. And that, I'm sure, could save on overall thickness, because right now in the US, they just replaced the physical SIM tray with a useless piece of plastic. Wow, thanks Apple. We were all begging you to boost the battery life with that extra space you freed up, and instead they're like, no, why don't we just leave the battery and make the iPhone thinner? That's what everybody wants, right? But there's also supposed to just be a single camera, probably pretty similar to the single camera found on the 16E on the 17 Air as well. One rear-facing camera on a $900 phone is going to be pretty difficult to stomach, and I personally think there's a decent chance they might leave out MagSafe as well. But recent reports are saying they're still going to make room for camera control. That frustrates me, considering I pretty much never use it on my iPhone. And funny story, there are often times where I hand my phone to someone else to take a picture, and they will bump the camera control button and cause it to zoom out or zoom in more than than they're comfortable with, and then I have to explain to them how it works. It's not a great feature. I wish they would have left that off the phone, but Apple is still doubling down on it yet. It hasn't hit its 3D Touch era yet. But there's even been rumors that they're going to compromise on the speakers on the 17 Air as well. So it might not have a traditional stereo speaker setup. It might just have, you know, the top earpiece that gets extra loud when you are on speakerphone or when you're playing videos and stuff. But it might not sound as great as the other iPhones, which when I list all of the downsides, a bunch of you are probably like, why the heck is Apple making this thing? No one's gonna spend $900 on just a super thin, lightweight iPhone, in which I want to push back a little bit and just explain some of the reasons people might be pretty interested in the 17 Air. For one, this is also supposed to be the first year that ProMotion displays are coming to lower-end iPhones. So technically, if we're just talking about new iPhone models, which I always tell people to look in the used refurbished market, but so many comments are like, yeah, but that's refurbished. No one wants to do that. Everyone wants to pay full price. Okay, well, using that same logic, if you have to buy a full price iPhone, this will technically be the cheapest a 120 hertz iPhone has ever been. This is also a larger display for a sub $1,000 iPhone at 6.6 inches and retaining that high refresh rate. Also, it's supposed to be rocking the same chip as the regular iPhone 17 and A19, which I'm sure will have all kinds of great Genmoji features. Can't wait to hear about how this thing was built from the ground up for Apple Intelligence, right? And it's supposed to be the thinnest iPhone ever made. Thinner than even the iPhone 6, which had all kinds of Bendgate issues. Can't wait for Jerry Rig Everything to get his hands on this iPhone as well. Hopefully the switch to a more glass back helps with the rigidity a little bit. You'd gotta assume that Apple knows this is gonna be tested, right? Like, Apple has to have a trick up their sleeve to keep the rigidity strong, don't they? Or maybe Apple just likes getting in the middle of controversies. It's probably good for press. So if we just think for a second about the everyday consumer, maybe the 17 Air is not meant for the techies. It's definitely not meant for the camera enthusiasts out there like me, who are more so buying a camera that also happens to be a phone. I care about the main sensor being as rich and as vibrant as possible. I care about the ultra-wide lens. And yes, I'll say it, I even like having the Tetra Prism because I've got some really impressive portrait mode shots with the 5x focal length and everything. So as a guy who uses my phone as a camera like I am right now, more so than anything, I'm not probably gonna switch to a 17 Air because the camera is going to be near identical to the camera found on the 16e. Even an iPhone 13 mini probably has a better camera than the 17 Air, which is kind of weird to say. But for everyday consumers out there that are using this phone for FaceTime, for texting, for the occasional photo, but they're not like an expert photographer doing side-by-side comparisons with Pixel phones, they just want a big, vibrant display so it's easier to read their texts, easier to read their emails, and they don't want it to feel like an enormous brick, because if you're like my mom out there, there's a lot of people that put these phones in cases with their wallets, and then every time they pull out a credit card or some cash or an ID or something like that, they have to pull out their whole phone with them. And my mom has routinely let me know that, like, she likes the size of her 13 Pro Max. She doesn't want the screen to get any smaller, but she's annoyed with how heavy it is. And then I let her hold my 16 Pro Max. I was like, well, Mom, they switched to titanium. It's much lighter now. And she's like, even this phone doesn't feel that much lighter. So she wants that big old screen, but she wants it to be thin and she wants it to be really, really light. So a mini iPhone wouldn't really satisfy those needs, and a folding phone is probably just going to come at the compromise of cost, and it's going to make the display feel a bit more cheap and plasticky with the crease. And I've seen many people in my personal life with the Galaxy flip phones that never actually flip them up. They just leave them unfolded constantly. Pretty common among the moms for some reason, but $900 for an iPhone that's going to work well with their iMessage ecosystem, big old screen, lightweight design, easy to watch content on. Did they get their stereo speakers? No, but most of the time they're not watching videos in landscape anyway, right? We're kind of in the era of TikTok and YouTube shorts, and everybody's just watching stuff in vertical mode, so a lot of people probably won't even notice that it's not in landscape mode, and a lot of that demographic isn't going to care that there's not a physical SIM tray anymore. They're just going to be ready to switch to the eSIM future and forget about it, because they're probably rocking, you know, iPhone 12s or 11s right now, so they're going to upgrade their phone, go through the little eSIM transfer process, and then just move on and probably not upgrade for another 7 to 8 years. It started off as a really weird, obscure rumor that made no sense, and now I think it actually might sell pretty well. I think this is probably a pretty decent idea, especially considering the Plus iPhones aren't selling that well. Might as well make it a bit more unique, but still at a reasonable price, and I'm kind of excited to check one out. Because none of the other reports from the 17 or Pro or Pro Max sound very interesting. It's just like, look, the camera bump got even bigger! Wow, very creative, Apple. Good job. But seeing how Apple can redesign the packaging of the iPhone and at what cost of compromising features, yeah, I'm mildly curious to see how this goes. What do you guys think of the reports of the iPhone 17 Air? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Shapiro, and I'll see you all in the next one.